Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the Berlin Critics Week, 10th edition. We are about to start, and the first thing you will see is our festival trailer as a little appetizer for our program in the coming days. Then we will start welcoming you again. I will also be back on stage saying a little more, and there will be Elfi Mikesch for the Academy of the Arts speaking a few words of welcome directly after the trailer, and the rest I will tell you about in a few minutes. We have translated some of the speeches. Mine will be in English for somebody who needs it in German. Falls jemand meine Eröffnungsrede, die ich gleich halten werde, auf Deutsch benötigt, es gibt die hinten, die können Sie sich nach der Veranstaltung nochmal holen, also falls Sie kein Englisch sprechen. Allerdings werden auch die Gespräche danach auf Englisch sein, das heißt, Sie werden sowieso nicht so viel mitbekommen. Also viel Glück. For everybody who needs the welcoming words of Elfi Mikesch, in English there's a translation in the back of the room to be picked up after the event. So enjoy our trailer, hopefully, and see you very soon.
Guten Abend, guten Abend. Alles gut? Mir ist es eine besondere Freude, Sie hier in der Akademie der Künste zur Konferenz Woche der Kritik, Filme machen um jeden Preis, Kino, Kritik, Klimakrise begrüßen zu können. Ein Themenschwerpunkt dieses Programms ist das Kapitel Natur als Subjekt. Darin heißt es, Kino im Zeichen des Klimawandels vermag mehr als nur zu bebildern und zu dokumentieren, was bedroht ist oder was zerstört wurde. Es ist nicht allein die Feststellung und Wahrnehmung von Symptomen in unseren Gesellschaften und Kulturen. Film und Kino kann den Blick auf Hintergründe und Ursachen richten, Vergangenheit zu erinnern, Gegenwart zu reflektieren und Zukunft zu denken. Zu träumen, um wach zu sein und dafür zu kämpfen, dass unsere Welt und wir mit ihr in einem Gleichgewicht balancieren. Unsere Zeit ist erhitzt bis überhitzt. Wir haben diesen Zustand verursacht und beschleunigen ihn weiter. Raubbau und Krieg gehen Hand in Hand, Ignoranz mit Habgier. Die raue und heiße Wirklichkeit hat den Namen Klimakatastrophe. Wir müssen uns dringend den Fragen stellen nach der Hybris. Vielgestaltig ist sie und sie in Frage stellen. Wir können uns des Kinos neu besinnen, seinen Wirklichkeiten und Träumen, der Produktion, und es ist das Medium schlechthin, das sich durch eine nachhaltige Geschichte vorzüglich und als Beispiel auf den Prüfstein stellen lässt. Die Bedingungen von Produktionsweisen, die Verwendung und Verschwendung von Material durch die Vielfalt seiner Erscheinungen und ihrer Fakten. Krisen und Unruhen, die Herausforderungen provozieren. Wir sind heute hier, um Kritik als Herausforderung anzunehmen, aber auch als Chance wahrzunehmen. Hören wir, welche Sprache das Klima spricht, und wir werden Nachhaltigkeit begrüßen. Das Klima diktiert uns das eindringlich durch seine Phänomene und führt uns deutlich vor Augen, was getan werden kann und könnte. Wir sind hier, um die dem Kino innenwohnende Dynamik Kinosprache zu durchleuchten. Filmsprache ist Kommunikation. Kino ist wandlungsfähig und kann zukunftsweisende Geschichten erzählen. Das hat nachhaltige Wirkung, zeigt Kreisläufe, die positiv, aber auch negativ sein können. Wie hoch ist der Preis? Klima als Teil von Weltgeschichte ist ein Seismograph, mit dem sich Kino messen lässt und sich neu orientieren kann. Kino als Ort verdanken wir, dass wir uns auf unsere Wahrnehmung auf ganz bestimmte, auch spielerische Weise einlassen. Die Möglichkeit des Kinos, ein dunkler Raum, gibt uns Gelegenheit, sich zu besinnen, Selbstkritik und Reflexion stattfinden zu lassen. Kino hat schon immer Kino kritisiert. Und diese Veranstaltung, ihre Programme und die Gespräche laden dazu ein. Ich spreche hier als Filmemacherin und Bildermacherin, die sich grundsätzlich die Frage stellt, wo beginnt Nachhaltigkeit? Nachhaltigkeit beginnt mit der Sprache. Was ist und was mit Sprache in Gang gesetzt wird, hat Folgen. Deshalb ist Nachhaltigkeit auch eine Form der Kunst. Und wir wissen es. Hinterfragen wir unsere Gewohnheiten, dazu gehören auch unsere Sehgewohnheiten. Wir wissen es, was Kunstfreiheit heißt, wenn sie Menschenrechte missachtet. Ist sie dann noch Freiheit? Wir wissen, was Hybris ist, welche Auswirkungen es hat, dass auf unserem Planeten Frauen immer noch unter extremen Einschränkungen leben müssen, junge Frauen, Kinder, Menschen, und dass die Frauen getötet werden, dass sie vergewaltigt werden. Wir wissen das. Wir wissen, dass Millionen Menschen auf der Flucht sind, dass sie von extremen Klimabedingungen, von Gewalt, von Krieg bedroht werden, durch Armut. Ebenso bedroht die Pflanzen- und die Tierwelt, die Wasserwelt. Wir wissen von der Umweltverschmutzung. Gewissen und Verantwortung. Noch nie standen uns Wissen und Informationen in solch einem Ausmaß zur Verfügung, die sichtbaren und spürbaren Zusammenhänge. Wir können nicht mehr sagen, das sehen wir nicht, denn der Planet und unsere Umwelt sprechen eine sehr deutliche Sprache. Wir haben hier heute, hier und jetzt die Möglichkeit, die entsprechende Sprache zu hören, die entsprechenden Sprachen für eine Welt, in der nachhaltig gedacht und gehandelt wird. Kino als nachhaltiger Prozess. Nachhaltigkeit ist Notwendigkeit. Die Erde ist ein Lebewesen, ein lebendiger Körper. Es ist notwendig für diesen Körper, Empathie zu empfinden und sie zu pflegen und damit ein Bewusstsein für Nachhaltigkeit zu entwickeln. Und wir haben Kino. In diesem Sinne wünsche ich eine gute Zeit, kreativ und den Humor nicht zu vergessen, denn Humor ist besonders nachhaltig.
Vielen herzlichen Dank für Ihre Worte. Thank you very much, Elfi, Mikesch. I would also like to thank the Academy of the Arts for welcoming us again for the third time to host our opening event this year. I would like to thank Thomas Heise, the head of the section of Film and Media Art. I would like to thank for the great collaboration again, Cornelia Klaus and Mechthild Kramer von Laue. And I would like to thank as well our other venues, the Hackische Höfe Cinema, which has been supporting us since the first edition and where we will be showing our films in the next days, and also the Cinema Transtopia, with whom we are collaborating for the first time this year for a workshop hosted by TJ Demos. I would like to thank our funding partners, the Hauptstadt Kulturfonds, the Stiftung Kulturwerk of the VG Bildkunst and the Rudolf Augstein Stiftung, and our longtime partners, the University of the Arts and the Hotel Catalonia Berlin-Mitte, and the Goethe Institutes of India in Peking, as well as the Embassy of Portugal in Berlin, and the US Embassy, who made it possible for TJ Demos to come and work with us together on this conference and present events here in Berlin, besides this one, about which I will be telling you more after this. Since this is the 10th edition of the festival, I would also like to thank the people who have made possible Critics Week, namely the founding team members of this festival. First of all, Frederik Jäger, who fought for this idea over years, way before it was started, and then put a lot of pressure on us to do it. It was immensely exciting that time, and I'm looking back on these years with a lot of joy, and I've learned so much from our collaboration. And and also the others who were involved in that time, and also the years after, Dunja Bialas, Vivian Buchhorn, Michael Hack, and Jendrik Valendi, who were all the founding team members of the festival and made it what it is today. So now I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes for 10 years of Critics Week, a minute for each year, and I'm speaking in the name of the current collective. We are 4 festival directors. I'm together with Amos Borchert, Elena Friedrich, and Petra Palmer. Thank you all for being a collective together in this time. It's an immensely demanding time, and for thinking so much together. We had many discussions, as you can imagine. So yeah, I'll get going. The Berlin Critics Week was founded as a platform for debate culture and activist film criticism. While it is now in its 10th year, there's still a paucity of debate and honest discussion in film culture at large. I speak of debates in which contradictions are possible and welcome. Debates during which the participants put aside status politics and don't hide behind professionalism, but express themselves honestly. The recent debates around film festivals in Germany specifically were actually debates about the festivals, sometimes about specific festival directors, but rarely do we see such debates happening at festivals, on stage at the events. Whether things will be different at this year's Berlinale is a question we will all be exploring over the next week. The invitation of 5 members of the neo-Nazi party AfD to the Berlinale's opening night was sharply criticized by many associations, cultural workers, and team members. It was only because of public pressure that the festival management eventually took a stance and the party representatives were disinvited. Some of them are still planning to attend the festival, however, not to mention the announcement this week by the mayor of Berlin that invitations will be sent to the party members again in the coming years. The current and future directors of Germany's largest film festivals, one of the largest cultural events in the country, will need to take a clear stance on their relationship to politics. A stance that will have ramifications beyond just the Berlinale, likely informing policy at cultural events countrywide and elsewhere too. And we all will need to show attending party members that we do not support their politics in our spaces. I hope. If you like to speculate, you might have spent some time recently wondering what an alternative world to ours might look like, an idea which is raised a lot in climate discourse. Maybe a world without war, maybe a world without a collapsing ecosystem, or a world with different decision makers. Maybe even a world in which all cultural workers and artists switch professions and take over the work of activists and politicians. Such a world felt quite palpable during the recent weeks when many artists and many of us cultural workers directly demanded political change, especially in relation to the Gaza war. The intense reactions to the renewed fights in Gaza resulted for many of us in a growing hesitation to talk publicly about politics and a fear of being judged by colleagues or even friends. We became each other's juries. In many cases, we have performed and signaled our politics to each other instead of taking action. Anger or hesitation were often followed by silence or frustration, stagnation, or escalating words. We have experienced divisions within the cultural landscape and damage to liberal institutions. Such divisions, such damage, might ultimately play into the hands of anti-democratic forces like the AfD. It seems unavoidable and has to be possible in times of war to make our anger and frustration heard, to express it at each other as well as at institutions and politicians. But it also seems essential for cultural events like ours, which peaceful countries are privileged enough to have, to defend democratic principles and create spaces in which reflection can happen, or even must happen. Spaces in which knowledge or experiences can be shared and thoughtful exchange can take place. Spaces in which empathy, mourning, and healing do not contradict political action, and within which it is possible to create solidarity with and active support for those who are actually living in the middle of a war, be it in Ukraine, Gaza, the Congo, Sudan, or others. In order to position ourselves as the cultural sector in relation to wars and other crises, to define and express political demands, we need to focus on common goals rather than differences. Ongoing wars can only end if all parties commit to a clear position for peace. Why this long comment? Firstly, because the military sector causes an estimated 5 to 6% of all global CO2 emissions, which makes it the world's largest force of climate destruction. Some of you might also have heard about the plan of building the largest ammunition factory in Germany, which was just announced a few days ago in presence of Olaf Scholz by the company Rheinmetall. Secondly, because we hope that in the future, an activist kind of film criticism will always address society as a whole and try to see the larger picture, especially when it seems most difficult. We see it as a responsibility of criticism and journalism to endure the tensions that pervade the public sphere and the cultural sector and respond to these tensions with caution, care, analysis, and research. We hope that critics will ask specific and persistent questions that reveal and emphasize the role that art and culture have in our societies. But critics also need to defend art from being appropriated by politics. The last few months have shown how quickly and deeply images can affect societies, how overwhelming and captivating images can be, how images can become tools of war. Looking at recent images of Gaza and the escalating debates in many countries, we have repeatedly discussed boycotts as a political strategy. We have been deeply concerned with the question of when and how to draw a red line politically, and in which cases we should begin to distrust images or artists. We discussed this question several times in our collective of 4, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. We repeatedly failed to reach a consensus, and yet we always came to the same conclusion with regard to this one issue. We do not subscribe to boycott logics in the arts. By definition, Critics Week is a space in which all experiences can and should be discussed, starting from cinema, which is not only a window to the world, but also to consciousness. Amidst the ongoing and persistent demands for clear positions, we want to underline the importance of openness and ambiguity. The films in our program will hopefully prompt you and our guests to discuss the many means by which cinema draws its peculiar power, like the unconscious, the dreamy and the seductive, the many ways of being overwhelmed and speechless, the boredom as well as the excess and the frenzy, and of course, here I agree with Ms. Mikesch, the humor. Finally, a few words about what comes next. Tonight, we will discuss the climate crisis and its relationship to cinema in a compact 2 hours. Of course, no questions will be left unanswered, but in case there is something left unsaid, you can discuss climate politics and more again with us on Friday evening at Hackische Höfe Cinema, after watching a selection of TJ Demos' films. Well, he has curated them, not made them. We have also published an online magazine which features more approaches to this topic, edited by the writer and curator Greg de Queer Jr., who can't be here with us today, but who strongly influenced some of the better thoughts in this lecture. Tonight, we are focusing mainly on some renunciation as far as films are concerned. We will focus on the spoken word, and are thus already in the thick of our topic, which also encompasses questions about what we can let go of in our lives. As far as I am able to speak for myself here, it won't be films for me. To warm you up, we have 2 lectures for you, with journalist and climate activist Sara Schurmann speaking first, followed by TJ Demos. Then there will be a discussion with Sara and 3 producers, Febuk, Cassandre, Warnauts. I'm sorry, I didn't ask you how to pronounce your name, you can help me later, and Ada Solomon. We will end with an open discussion with you all and some space for your thoughts and questions, before then moving to the 4th floor of the building to spend some more time together without the stage. Today and on Friday, in personal and philosophical discussions, we will try to see the climate crisis not just as a job for professionals, but as a problem of society, in other words, for us all. I wish all of us every success in this endeavor. Thank you.
I already have to contradict, I'm not a climate activist. I would describe myself maybe as an activist for better climate journalism. But this is just like one small side note. So what I would like to talk about is why a story makes a difference, on the importance and responsibility of representing the climate crisis in film and media. The way media represents the climate crisis is key to public awareness and political accountability. And looking at the overall reporting, it's nowhere near the actual threat we are facing. I'm a journalist and co-founder of the German Climate Journalism Network, and over the past 4 years, I've worked extensively with the questions of why the climate crisis is not adequately portrayed in the media, what effects this has on the public discourse and the public perception, and how climate issues can be told effectively. I see a lot of overlap between the depiction of the climate crisis in journalism and in film. both in terms of the problems and of the responsibility. But I also think that film often has even more narrative possibilities here and can have an even deeper and lasting impact on our viewers. That's why I'm really, really grateful to be here and be able to speak to you. And yeah, I always want to mention that there is great climate reporting, but most of the coverage in the politics and economics section still completely ignore all the interconnections. And there are great films and documentaries that are entirely dedicated to the climate crisis, to planetary crisis or ecological crisis. But given the urgency of the crisis and how intertwined they already are with our everyday lives, there is still surprisingly little reflected in the breadth of films. Journalistic reporting and media portrayal of the climate crisis thus distorts the perception of how existential and complex the situation already is. The climate crisis is not an issue, it's a dimension. It's a cross-cutting issue connected more or less to every issue, every region, every aspect of our lives. Journalists, and probably also filmmakers, I'm happy to discuss this later, must thus ask always two questions. First, what impact does my topic have on the climate crisis? And second, what influence does the climate crisis have on my topic? As long as the impacts of extreme weather and the changing climate on our crops, our infrastructure, our homes, our health, our safety, our plans for the future and our everyday lives are not consistently made visible and appropriately connected to the climate crisis, we as a society can easily ignore them in everyday life. Also, the climate crisis is fueled by more or less every sector. This has to be taken into account in every reporting. The existing connections should be made transparent by journalists. This is also true for film, I think. I lately saw a series on Netflix where a bunch of friends was going on a trip for the weekend, but their plane couldn't land in the city they wanted to visit because of extreme rain. However, there was not a single hint as to what this might have to do with the climate crisis, neither for the domestic flight nor for the heavy rain. It was simply represented as if both were completely normal. What's important to mention here is that these connections are not being made visible already today is not about the failure of individual journalists or filmmakers. There are structural problems. There are reasons why we're there where we're at the moment, and we do see the same problems in other sectors too. Journalists and also filmmakers, but maybe to a different extent, have a dual role in society. On the one hand, we reflect the ignorance of the climate crisis in society, and on the other, we reproduce and cement it through our reporting. Journalistic ignorance makes individual and collective ignorance of the climate crisis possible in the first place, I would argue. The gatekeeping function of big media outlets still shouldn't be underestimated. As long as they aren't putting the climate crisis on the front pages and into the main news where they belong, other things are considered more important and urgent. Climate is no longer a beat for specialized journalists, and it's not an issue for wildlife documentaries or special movies. It's a dimension of every issue and should be made visible as what it is. So why is this not already happening today? Well, journalists and filmmakers are also just humans. They underlie psychological constraints, defense mechanisms like the confirmation bias or cognitive dissonance. If you don't know it, I don't have time to explain it, but Google it, it's really interesting. And most of us never learned about all these interconnections and the complexity at school or at training. So there is a considerable lack of knowledge and understanding of facts and correlations. I could see this for myself and I had to read up for a long time. And as we all hear about the climate crisis for ages, I mean, for me it's like whole of my life, people tend to think that they have an idea about how urgent the crisis is. Especially journalists and politicians who spend their time working on the problems of our world consider themselves knowledgeable. But journalists and filmmakers do also have a special responsibility. On the one hand, media depicts reality. On the other hand, it creates reality. As long as the majority of political and economic journalists don't include the climate crisis in their considerations and reporting, we let politicians get away with fueling the climate crisis instead of stopping it. This might be a major difference between journalism and film. But even though you could argue that filmmakers don't have the same responsibility here, I would argue that you would have an extreme effective lever on public discourse if you do use the means open to you. From big global sports events to new construction projects in your community, almost everything has an effect and is affected. We don't necessarily need more reporting on climate science, even though there are some studies we really should put on the front headlines. But what we need to do is to show what science means for our lives. Not everyone is interested in the climate crisis that seems abstract or overwhelming for people, but everyone is particularly interested in something. And the climate crisis is in one way or another related to that. It's not just a climate crisis, it's a health crisis, a social crisis, a food crisis, a care crisis. It's connected to racism, sexism, classism, and much more. It touches your own garden, your home, your pension, your kids, your grandparents, and your soccer club. Civic councils show the climate crisis is not understood. Public discourse is distorted. But the education provided in the citizens' councils that you might know because they spring up in every country and just very normal people get invited and educated by experts how bad the crisis is and what are really, really effective measures to work against it. And this education provided can be replicated on a bigger scale through journalism. I'm really convinced of that. Journalism plays a central role in democracy to set guardrails for discourse, and it's crucial to enable informed decision-making and action. The more adequately reporting reflects knowledge of the situation, the more likely it is that we help drive the change in consciousness and also lead to action. I'm not saying that we're making perfect decisions if everybody knows, so I'm not as naive, but I'm really convinced that at the moment the discourse isn't as informed to really lead to informed decisions. And this is not activism, it's kind of important to say so in journalism, but it's really just journalistic enlightenment in the best sense. I see some differences, but in many respects also very similar situations with film on. On the one hand, film depict aspects of reality, different genres to different degrees, I know that. And at the same time, it's even clearer here that the cinematic narrative can influence our perception of the world. Compared to most journalistic articles, film actually have two advantages. Firstly, a comparatively long attention span, over which a lot of information or awareness and development can be conveyed. Secondly, they have even better means to link emotions and facts, and I think this is really, really important to create a deeper effect and a deeper understanding. There are several films that tell the story of the disaster very well. Good and well-known examples in the recent years are, of course, Don't Look Up and the Apple TV series Extrapolations. In Don't Look Up, the absurdity of our current situation is depicted. Also, many people probably perceive this as some kind of exaggerated portrayal. People from the climate bubble actually recognize that this is kind of a one-to-one transfer and therefore didn't find the film all that funny. Good, but not funny. Extrapolations is the first cinematic portrayal I've seen that tells the story of the climate collapse in the near future in its everyday reality. Better in some episodes, less good in others, but overall very well. What I miss is that films and series show the effects of global warming that are already affecting us all today. not as a climate film, but as the reality that it is, which accompanies us today in everything we do. Why do couples in film never talk about whether they still can imagine having children? Why don't friends in series worry about their pension? Why are extreme weather events shown but presented as if they are completely normal? Why is it completely natural and okay to eat meat and fly and drive around in a fat car? I'm not asking at all to distort reality and make all the protagonists of your films like climate-conscious eco-hippies, not at all. But why is it that in the vast majority of cases, not even the slightest doubt, slightest hesitation, or a question mark is visible? Yes, films show what's considered normal in society, but films also influence what's perceived as normal. But what I foremost miss in films, and where I do see a huge opportunity that's being missed out until now, is that society could and should also be shown as capable of acting, capable of changing things, and that this therefore becomes imaginable. Extrapolations and Don't Look Up are great, but people there are being portrayed as isolated individuals, either powerless or powerful. The catastrophe is inevitable. The good old story of one single hero saving the world as well won't work for the climate story, but I'm convinced that there are more options. Opportunities and stories that are out there and filmmakers can bring to a larger audience, make them visible, noticeable, and for many thinkable like no one else. Because where's the wider public supposed to get the idea that change is possible if even films have not yet managed to tell that story? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm TJ Demos. I teach about contemporary art and politics at the University of California, Santa Cruz. It's great to be here. Thanks so much to Dennis and Petra and Elena and Amos for the invitation to participate in the Critics Week. It's a real honor and privilege. And it's been a real amazing experience. All the discussions that we've had in preparation for this, it's really like highly organized and very thoughtful in terms of how they're approaching this year's iteration of Berlin's Critic Week. I guess I should also thank the U.S. Embassy. I never thought I would be in the position of thanking the U.S. Embassy, given my politics and how much I'm at odds with the U.S. government, but I guess never say never. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the program that I've designed, which will be playing Friday evening, and it's called Elemental Bodies, Media Ecologies of and Against Extraction. So I'll say a few words about that. Drawing on Arjuna Newman's and Denise Ferreira da Silva's Serpent Rain from 2016, which is also a video in the program. The program of short-length contemporary artistic videos that critically investigates media ecologies of extraction, as well as creative alternatives, is the focus of what I've come up with. What have fossil capitalism, AI, and the digital green economy made of the cinematic image, we can ask? And how are artists responding at the nexus of aesthetics and politics, reimagining life and embodiment otherwise? Media ecologies of extraction can mean, let me go back first. Media ecologies of extraction can mean several things. First, it refers to a way of talking about video as media, a mode of communication that operates in a larger ecology, which can mean installations or gallery presentations, theaters, as well as social media. Second, it identifies the fact that media ecologies, for instance, social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok, are themselves engines of extraction, of mined user information and freely supplied user content. Media ecology is the study of media environments which affect human environments, social relations, and natural geographies. And the phrasing can help stimulate discussion of how video carries a carbon footprint owing to its energy sources and its materiality of fabrication, which, when it comes to natural environmental destruction and to social alienation, both extend to extraction. The use of the condensed term, then, media ecologies of extraction, provocatively opens up multiple meanings and provides a useful structuring device in relation to the specific videos included in the program. Let's see here. One important reference when it comes to extraction is Sandra Mazadra's and Brett Nielsen's research, a key reference for me, which defines extraction as the dominant logic of capital. A one-way withdrawal of value from labor, from the earth, from life, without any corresponding return, except in the form of waste, exhaustion, toxicity, and death. Mazadra and Nielsen differentiate between primary extraction, in other words, oil drilling, coal mining, rare earth extraction, in the context of industrial fossil capitalism, and secondary orders, for instance, extraction of labor, of data, of resources, of intangibles, the economy of affects and attention, and the time-consuming ghost work providing labeling and coding, for instance, for AI image recognition. Through the financialization of all realms of life, these multiple strands form the basis of what we can call, and what Brett Nielsen and Mazadra call, racial capitalism, the convergence of neoliberalism and ethno-nationalism, financial crisis, and how colonialism, empire, and globalization have shaped the modern state since World War II. In so doing, they analyze the distinctive rationality of contemporary capitalism while calling for a politics based on collective institutions that exist outside the state. Elemental Bodies places 5 short experimental artist videos in proximity to this structural logic, offering the opportunity for us to investigate how each mediates, describes, thematizes, and critically interrogates extraction or extractivism, which I'm proposing is at the basis of climate breakdown. So let me talk a little bit briefly about each of the 5 films. The first, The Ecology of Science Fiction, and you see, I'm going to show some stills of the videos, is directed by Renee Hendricks, Tobias Decker, and Marlene Fisher, and it investigates how billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk have mobilized the power of images to build socioeconomic support for their neo-libertarian space colonization projects. Sara was just talking about the importance of cinema as a source of stories, and certainly this connects to the work that I'm discussing as well. Made in a seminar taught by the filmmaker and critic Kevin B. Lee, their video defines a cinematic pedagogy of eco-critical comparative analysis, especially in the ending sequence, where Musk's and Bezos's simulated futures are placed next to sci-fi cinematic clips, showing how their techno-utopianism extracts popular film fantasies to ideologically justify an ever-extreme corporatocracy. So this is a still from the double channel video, and you can see how they're comparing back-to-back these images, fiction and reality. Literally No Place by Daniel Felsted and Jen Lung follows up by interrogating the dichotomy of AI techno-utopianism, promising a false future of emancipation achieved through artificial intelligence, and on the other hand, techno-doomerism, which cynically warns of human extinction and the end of the world owing to annihilation by AI superintelligence. But the real truth is, and they get at this in the video, the shared dedication of each, whether it's techno-utopianism or techno-doomerism, both are indebted to an extractive attention economy from which platform capitalism ultimately profits, with us viewers the products and our data the raw material. Another clip from, another still from Literally No Place. The third video, Serpent Rain, by Arjuna Newman and Denise Ferreira da Silva, thematizes the intersection of primary modes of extraction with that of colonial racial capitalism, with the film's nonlinear durational shots and speculative provocation, inquiring into the possibility of non-technological posthumanism, in contrast to Felsted and Lung's Literally No Place. In Newman and Ferreira da Silva's version, Elemental Bodies proposes a raw materiality without space-time determinations, outside of and beyond the oppressive grammar of dominant Western Enlightenment subjectivity and its techno-domination. It's hard to describe it or even point to it through stills, because it's such a deeply phenomenological film. We would really need to watch it to get a sense of what they're getting at. Fourth, the Autolith Group's short video called Message of the Forest reflects on a 1921 speech of the Indian nature philosopher and education theorist Rabindranath Tagore, who advocates an alternative ecological modernity that never happened, owing to colonization, industrialization, and techno-nationalism, where every large-scale extractive project destroys the earth care, multi-species flourishing, and social well-being proposed by this early 20th century environmentalist. Still, Tagore offers a proposal for a relocalized, socially connective, environmental pedagogy, now nearly forgotten, but it's an old story worth retelling for a different possible future. Finally, Angela Melitopoulos' Crossings presents a split-screen, 20-minute excerpt from her complex original 4-channel audio-visual installation commissioned for the 2017 Documenta. The video details and draws together multiple socio-political strands through a kind of chaosmosis of cinematic form, the term of Felix Guattari, including EU's austerity dictates, the economic exploitation of the Greek population and the Greek environment, and the massive human rights violations against refugees. Multiple images convey a structural intersectionality focused on the emergent financial authoritarianism of governance by debt, sold through ethno-nationalism and backed up by the militarization of borders. So it seems extraction is our now dominant reality, provoking the urgent political question, how might we live otherwise, non-extractively, and for a different livable future? But first, we have to understand where we're at currently. So I'd like to play a brief clip from Literally No Place. And if you can call up the image of that video right now, that would be great. Which offers us a powerful lens, I think at least, reeling off in this 2 minutes that you're about to see a flickering phantasmagoria of viral internet imagery, much of it AI augmented through software like Stable Diffusion, featuring, for instance, a dancing Elon Musk, as if king of the world. The clip portrays life merged with proliferating screens and scenes from the contemporary spectacularization of contradiction, set to a techno beat. A glamorous Beyoncé billboard soaring over a homeless person huddled in shivering sleep. The tech fantasy desert space of Burning Man. Flying drones and lithium extraction sites, which is the main area at the forefront of the new green economy. A flooded Bangladesh and a burning Greece and a burning California. The ghost work of AI labor, surveillance, robotics, wired brains, bunker architecture, images of AI-generated multi-fingered hands, Black sci-fi author Octavia Butler, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Trump, Mark Fisher's capitalist realism, the Pope in a white puffy coat, all flashing before us, nearly too fast to be seen, a rhythm beyond human comprehension. Both media of extraction and extractive media. It's a screen world accelerated beyond our imagination. Figurations of elemental bodies composed of pixels, cyborgs, memes, VR fused with sci-fi coded with futurity, a doom scroll keyed to the beat of Heaven's Knocking at My Door, and finishing with Robert Oppenheimer singing the Barbie theme song, courtesy of TikTok. So this is going to be a little loud, but you'll get a good experience of the video. Apologies in advance. Hopefully you'll find it interesting, and it's a great teaser for Friday evening screening. So if you could play that video, thank you.
Party world, life in plastic, it's fantastic. You can press my hair, undress me everywhere. Imagination, life is your creation.
Welcome to our future. Thank you.